Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our live coverage of the latest mission from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. I'm Will Robinson Smith. I'll be providing our commentary for the duration of this coverage. We're coming to you live from the Spaceflight Now News Bureau here at NASA's Kennedy Space Center. Hope you all had a wonderful weekend so far, and to all the moms out there, a very happy Mother's Day to you. We are joined by our regular launch team this evening as we are now T-minus 58 minutes, 3 seconds and counting. Our Stephen Young is running the technical operations of the broadcast. Out in the field are Adam Bernstein getting ready to track the rocket once it lifts off and do some still photography as well. And Michael Kane also doing some still photography for us this evening as well. We're also joined by our friends Pete Carsons with Max Q Productions and Chuck Briggs, whose camera view you're looking at right now. Looking across the water at, of course, the vehicle getting ready to launch in a little under 58 minutes. This is SpaceX's Falcon 9 rocket, the workhorse vehicle for the company. Getting ready to embark on the 334th Falcon 9 flight to date. And on the year, this will be launch number 49 for SpaceX of its Falcon family of vehicles. Looking at a Falcon Heavy launch coming up next month, but for now, they've all been Falcon 9 rockets, so fairly easy to keep track of. Speaking of keeping track, if you'd like to follow our launch photography team, you can track them down on X, not too terribly difficult. You can find Michael Kane at MD Kane Jr., Adam Bernstein at ABurnNYC. And while you're there, if you're not already, be sure to follow Spaceflight Now, simply at Spaceflight Now. If you're not on X, you can also find us on Threads as well as Facebook. And if you care to give me a follow as well, I'm also on Facebook. Just simply search Will Robinson Smith, or on X, W_Robinson Smith. Not currently on Threads, but, maybe at some point. For T-minus 56 minutes, 6 seconds and counting. The mission on tap tonight is the Starlink 6-58 mission. This is set to be SpaceX's 34th dedicated launch, with a batch of 23 of its Starlink satellites heading up to low Earth orbit. Per the numbers from expert orbital tracker and astronomer Jonathan McDowell, when you add these 23 Starlink satellites to what's already currently on orbit, it'll bring SpaceX up to 6,000 on the dot Starlink satellites currently orbiting above us after this launch deploys its payload. A little over 5,900 of them currently working, according to Jonathan McDowell. SpaceX is targeting a T0 liftoff of the mission tonight, a little before 9 o'clock. It's coming up at 8:53 p.m. Eastern, 00:53 UTC. I want to thank the more than 2,300 of you who are joining with us live as we kick off our coverage of the Starlink 6-58 mission. If you haven't already, like to help us out, you can do so by clicking the like button. It allows the YouTube algorithm to do its thing and bring this live coverage to more folks as we continue to merrily roll along. Also want to give a shout out to our wonderful moderators in the live chat. So thanks to folks like Astro Joe, Astro Jen, Rusty Shackelford, and a welcome to our newest moderator, Callistia Lee, one of our wonderful channel members who has very kindly joined our little moderator family, and we very much appreciate that. So thanks to all y'all do. Speaking of our member community, we are powered by some fabulous channel members here. Folks like Bubba Ray, Cats in the House, Mark Otto, Tiger, Expedition Greg, That Opal Guy, Stephen McCamey, James Wilson, Cynthia, Florida Girl. And many others. Channel membership comes with a number of perks, including discounts at our online shop.spaceflightnow.com, access to member-only videos, and the ability to watch the liftoff of all of our launches here on Florida's Space Coast in stunning 4K. And as we get things rolling here, I want to thank a few of our channel members for getting us off on a really very generous footing here. So thanks to Mark Otto for gifting 10 Spaceflight Now memberships, Callistia Lee for gifting 10 Spaceflight Now memberships, and big thank you to Artemis for coming back in here with not only gifting 50 Spaceflight Now memberships, but also an exceedingly generous super chat. Thank you so much, Artemis, for supporting us at that level. Really appreciate that. And for the kind support, I will be more than happy to read the comment with all the inflection and intention with which it is meant. And I'll pull my mic away so I don't blow us out. But it is Leroy Jenkins. Thanks, Artemis. Really appreciate that. And a welcome to our newest channel member, outside of those who were gifted channel memberships, Laura to So What. Thanks for joining us with channel membership at the pad leader level. And a very special welcome as a channel member to someone who joined before the stream started, but a name very familiar to the Spaceflight Now family. A welcome back to Miles O'Brien, joining us, I believe, at the mission specialist level. Excuse me, joining us at the launch director level. For those who may be unfamiliar, Miles was with Spaceflight Now back in the earlier days of our video content, and someone who's certainly a big name in the broadcast realm, and love to see Miles coming back to the fold, as it were. So we really appreciate you being back with us, Miles. And thanks to Psychonaut69 for gifting a Spaceflight Now membership, too. Really appreciate that. Coming back to the mission at hand, we'll join back in the live chat in just a little bit, but just to keep the ball rolling here, 45th Weather Squadron forecast fairly good outlook for tonight's mission. 85% probability of go weather, although you see here in our wide shot some lingering clouds in the area. Bit of an overcast start to the evening here, and the thick cloud layers rule was the main watch item for the liftoff weather. As far as additional risk criteria, it'll be no surprise to those who have been either on social media or somewhere north of Florida, or really even in Florida over the past weekend. We've seen a lot of the aurora activity thanks to the solar storm and the space weather that we've been encountering. It's been a way of creating some beautiful pictures, but also some consternation for launch opportunities, as 45th Weather Squadron forecast solar activity is between moderate and high for tonight's launch window. So we will see how much of an impact that may or may not make for this mission. It's likely to not make a huge impact, but something just to keep an eye on, nevertheless. If for whatever reason SpaceX needs to turn to their backup launch opportunity, which begins tomorrow at 8:59 p.m. Eastern, launch weather does deteriorate just a bit here, goes down to just 70% favorable, with both the thick cloud layers rule and liftoff winds being watch items. So certainly SpaceX would be in a better position weather-wise if they are able to launch tonight. Now T-minus 48 minutes, 21 seconds and counting. As we're getting ready for the start of the fueling process coming up in just a little over 10 minutes from now. Let's go ahead and walk you through the countdown timeline, let you know the events that we are waiting for before they come up here. Of course, the fueling process for a Falcon 9 rocket starts with the SpaceX launch director making the call to start it at the T-minus 38-minute mark. Assuming that go-ahead is given, a couple events happen simultaneously. T-minus 35 minutes, RP-1 or rocket-grade kerosene is loaded onto both the first and the second stages of the Falcon 9 rocket. At the same time, liquid oxygen is loaded on board the Falcon 9 first stage. T-minus 16 minutes, second stage liquid oxygen load begins. Before that happens, though, at about T-minus 20 minutes and 20 seconds, we'll see the so-called big vent from the Strongback happens as the feed lines are chilled at the pad. It's a very striking visual milestone and a good marker noting that fueling is in fact moving along on time. T-minus 7 minutes, the chill down of the 9 Merlin engines gets underway and involves flowing a small amount of liquid oxygen through the plumbing and the turbo pumps. It protects the engines from the risk of thermal shock and damage during the startup sequence. About 6 minutes before launch, the first stage kerosene tank should be full. Then at T-minus 4.5 minutes, we'll see the Strongback retract begin. It starts with the clamp arms underneath the payload fairings opening up. Then the Strongback, or the transporter erector, will recline about 1.5 degrees away. It stays in that position until liftoff, when it pulls back in a much more rapid fashion to clear the way for the vertical climb with Falcon 9. About 3 minutes out, the liquid oxygen tank on the Falcon 9 first stage should be full. 2 minutes before liftoff, LOX load wraps up, at which point the Falcon 9 is fully loaded with 1 million pounds of propellant. In the final 60 seconds, control of the countdown is handed over from the ground sequencer to the Falcon 9's onboard flight computers. The propellant tanks are brought up to flight pressure. SpaceX launch director gives their go for liftoff at 45 seconds out. The engine ignition command is issued at T-minus 3 seconds. And if all 9 Merlins ignite and are healthy, the flight computer will give the command for the hold down clamps to release the Falcon 9 for a T0 liftoff. Again, that's coming up at 8:53 p.m. Eastern, 00:53 UTC, or T-minus 45 minutes, 35 seconds. Now T-minus 43 minutes, 53 seconds and counting. I want to thank Artemis once again for a very generous $50 super chat. Really appreciate that, Artemis, for supporting us at that level and saying that the Leroy could use a bit more oomph next time. Certainly keep that note in mind. But as far as sort of large outbursts. We're going to go ahead and keep those to a minimum and keep things more on pace and on the level as we typically do here at Spaceflight now. But really appreciate that, Artemis. Also want to welcome Cheryl Robertson joining us the channel membership at the Pad Leader level. Welcome aboard, Cheryl. Glad to have you with us. And to Dryzala for super chat here. Thank you, Dryzala. Saying the original time was 8:11. Did it get pushed back? And yes, they did adjust the T0 time for tonight. It is 8:53 p.m. Eastern now. 00:53 UTC. If for whatever reason SpaceX is not in a position where it feels like it can start fueling, they do have opportunities within this launch window that last until 12:11 a.m. on Monday the 13th. Currently, all signs point to a launch, though, at 8:53 tonight. So let's go ahead and talk about where this Falcon 9 is going to fly once it leaves the pad. Let's talk a little trajectory, shall we? Falcon 9 rocket is going to be lifting off from the pad you see in that satellite view there. This is Space Launch Complex 40, otherwise known as Slick 40, over at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. Same with all the other Starlink missions that have launched to the 6th shell of the constellation. This one will also be flying in a southeasterly trajectory, heading east of the Bahamas. Little more than 8 minutes after liftoff, the Falcon 9 first stage will be landing on one of SpaceX's 3 drone ships. 2 of them are stationed here on the East Coast, and the one on deck tonight is a short fall of gravitas. We know from some comments from one of the SpaceX officials that the other drone ship here in Florida, just read the instructions, getting a little work done at a dry dock in the Bahamas, so it's going to be out of the loop for just a bit, but expect to see, just read the instructions, back in action before too much longer. SpaceX payload fairings will be jettisoned a little bit downrange of the map you see here on your screen. SpaceX has a couple of recovery vessels that it uses to scoop those up. Tonight they're going to be using Doug. It and Bob are named after the 2 now former NASA astronauts who flew aboard the first crewed flight of SpaceX's Dragon vehicle. It was the Demo 2 mission back in May of 2020. Here's what that process looks like of the recovery for the fairings. They splash down into the supportive parachutes. SpaceX noted in a company talk earlier this year that they save about $6 million per recovery effort, so it is certainly within their financial interest to make sure they're able to recover and refurbish the fairings as they are able. Here's what it looks like when they bring them aboard one of the recovery vessels. And of course, both the fairing halves as well as the first stage booster will be brought back into Port Canaveral, where the drone ship will offload the booster. Doug will offload the payload fairings, and then they'll be ready to go out and support the next launch. We're now at T-minus 39 minutes, 25 seconds and counting. We're now T minus 37 minutes, 12 seconds and counting. At this point, if SpaceX is prepared to move forward with fueling, they will have taken the poll. That happens at the T minus 38 minute mark. Fueling, if they are in a position to do so, set to begin now less than 2 minutes from this point in the countdown. Again, fueling will start with both the loading of RP-1 or rocket-grade kerosene into both the first and second stages of the Falcon 9 rocket, and liquid oxygen being loaded on board the Falcon 9 first stage. Assuming we don't hear from SpaceX about the start of fueling, which we'll see if they do comment on that. What we're looking for visually, if you look at the base of the Falcon 9 rocket in this shot here, you see the lights of the crew access tower. You go up 1, 2, 3 of those white lights. In between the second and the third light, if you bring your eyes now over to the Falcon 9 rocket just to the left of there, you see a little sort of lighter gray band that's just a slightly different hue than above and below it. It's right about that area where we normally start to see some vapor and a little bit of a frost ring form when the super cold densified liquid oxygen begins to be loaded on board the Falcon 9 first stage tanks. So that's a good visual indication that fueling is in fact underway. Again, that's if we have not heard word from SpaceX that fueling has begun. Fueling set to begin just about 30 seconds from now. Taking a look at the live chat. Want to thank Gordon Gott for a $10 super chat. Thank you so much, Gordon. Really appreciate that support. And Gordon says, love it when you say, and here we go. Well, if all proceeds on track with the launch tonight, we'll be hearing that in just about 35 minutes. Couple milestones for a couple of our channel members. Josh King has been a member now for 19 months. Really appreciate your ongoing support, Josh, who says, keep up the great work, Spaceflight Now crew. And yes, indeed, it is very much a team effort, and the well wishes have been passed along. One of our moderators, Astro Joe, has now been a channel member for 22 months. We appreciate Astro Joe for all he does for the channel and moderator duties. And last but not least, Valerie Jones has been a channel member for 5 months now. Valerie says, happy Mother's Day to all those who are a mom or have/had a mom. I will echo those sentiments and wish all the moms that are with us, or all the folks that are thinking fondly of their moms today, very happy Mother's Day. We're now T minus 34 minutes, 7 seconds and counting. Assuming fueling has begun, we're just about a minute into that process. And we do have word from SpaceX that propellant load is in fact underway. SpaceX uses a load and go style process for its Falcon vehicles, which in essence means that once fueling has begun, they do not have the option to hold the countdown. And so they are committing to targeting launch of the Falcon 9 rocket, barring any technical or weather issues, for liftoff at 8:53 p.m. Eastern, 00:53 UTC. We're now T minus 31 minutes, 34 seconds and counting. Want to thank Uncensored Facts for super chat this evening. Appreciate that. Seeing some venting here, or excuse me, not venting, some vapor near the base of the Falcon 9 first stage. So I was mentioning a sign that what we heard from SpaceX is in work right now, that the fueling of the Falcon 9 rocket is in motion. I want to thank Josh King for a $10 super chat. Really appreciate that. And a good question asking, if Starliner launches on Friday, when will it return to Earth? For those who may have been taking a break between things, of course, the Starliner spacecraft with NASA astronauts Butch Wilmore, Sonny Williams, was supposed to launch back on Monday the 6th, but because of a valve issue on the Centaur upper stage on the Atlas V rocket, they pivoted and are now targeting liftoff on the 17th. And again, while we don't have exact dates, and it'll be sort of partially weather dependent as far as the exact timing of the return, if the schedule from before holds thereabouts, we'll lift off on the 17th. We would expect docking probably on Sunday the 19th, and landing in the southwest United States probably around the 26th. Again, that's if you basically just take the schedule that they had before and slide it to the new dates. But they will have a launch readiness review coming up a little bit later this week, and we'll hopefully hear some more definitiveness on those launch dates, and we'll be sure to bring those to you as soon as we learn them more exactly. Mentioned as we started the broadcast, we are joined by our friends Chuck Briggs and Pete Carsons. We've showed you Chuck's view before, and our thanks to Pete for giving us a nice view of the moon tonight. Of course, the Aurora has been stealing the spotlight for the weekend, as well it should. There's been some spectacular photography from around the world, frankly, on that. But of course, our own little satellite always provides some great views throughout the year. Our thanks to Pete for these great views tonight. Now T minus 28 minutes, 47 seconds and counting. Within the last couple of minutes, SpaceX began loading cryogenic helium into the pressure vessels of the Falcon 9 first stage. The helium is important because it's used to pressurize the main propellant tanks during flight. The same process will begin on the Falcon 9 second stage at about the T minus 25 minute mark. Taking a look at the live chat here, I want to thank Jesse Mason for $10 super chat. Really appreciate that, Jesse. Thank you so much for your support this evening and for being a channel member as well. Jesse asks, how long does it take for the recovery ships to get back to port? How long does it take to get back into service? And suggests we need you to get a pen like a sports announcer. Draw that on the screen. Well, I think we're not quite Steve Kornacki with a big smart board. Maybe that's something we can invest in down the road. But for now, to actually answer your questions, it partially depends on how quickly SpaceX needs to get it back into service as far as the drone ships. We've seen turnarounds that have happened as quickly as once the drone ship has come into port, just a matter of about 6 hours or so before they have offloaded the booster and can get the drone ship ready to head back out. So if they need to hustle, they can, but there's not always the need to move that quickly. As far as the rate of launches, though, we may see things slow down for just a little bit here, which certainly would not be a bad thing to have some slow weeks. It's been a while, but with the little bit of servicing that Just Read the Instruction is getting down on the Bahamas, and the fact that very soon SpaceX will be converting Pad 39A into the Falcon Heavy configuration in support of the GOES U launch coming up on no earlier than June 25th. Maybe just a little bit slower here as far as launches from Florida Space Coast. Our thanks also to channel member SG for a $5 super chat. Thank you, SG. Aerospace Rocketry also with a $5 super chat. Thank you, Aerospace. Saying great job again, team. Pass the comments along to our full team here. Channel member Dave Rich with a $10 super chat. Hoping to see more launches in the early evening from Vandenberg so that you can see them in Arizona. I know it's always great when folks in Arizona and Utah and throughout California can see those launches. Get some great pictures from that part of the country. And to Stephen Ross for a $20 super chat. Really appreciate you supporting us at that level, Stephen. Thank you so much. We're now at the T-minus 25-minute mark here, right about the point where they're loading that cryogenic helium onto the second stage, the Falcon 9 rocket. We're now T-minus 22 minutes, 46 seconds and counting. Just about 2 minutes away from the start of the so-called big vent. Process lasts about 4 minutes, leading up to liquid oxygen load on the Falcon 9's second stage. Starts T-minus 16 minutes. We're now T minus 20 minutes, 17 seconds and counting, and you can see the start of the so-called big vent right on time. Again, a good visual indication that fueling is moving along on track and on pace tonight. We're now T minus 17 minutes, 37 seconds and counting. Got just about a minute left on the big vent before this goes ahead and wraps up. In the meantime, as we're waiting, want to thank the more than 14,000 of you that are watching with us live tonight. If you haven't already, great way to help us out is quick, easy, and free to do so just by hitting the like button, sharing the stream. It allows more folks to find this live coverage and lets the YouTube algorithm do its thing. Also want to thank a few folks for their support this evening. Our thanks to Alan Gable for a very generous $20 super chat. Thank you so much, Alan, for supporting us at that level, saying Spaceflight now rocks. Thank you, Alan. It's good to see you back again tonight. Our thanks also to Jack Wagner, one of our channel members, for gifting 10 Spaceflight Now memberships. Really appreciate that, Jack. And to our newest channel members, welcome aboard. Glad to have you with us. And if you haven't already, be sure to thank Jack in the live chat. And we hope you stay part of the member community after your month preview expires. Our thanks as well to Shirley Benoit for a $2 super chat. Thank you so much, Shirley. Good to see you this evening. James Crest Florist for a $10 super chat and a very funky emoji there. Thank you, James. One of our channel members, Janine, joining us again tonight with a $2 super chat saying hello to myself, Pete, Adam, Stephen, Michael, and Chuck. Hello to you, Janine. Welcome to Charles McMahon for joining us at the pad leader level with channel membership. Really appreciate that, Charles. As we see, the big vent has wrapped up as we are now T minus 15 minutes, 50 seconds and counting, and just about 15 seconds into the process of liquid oxygen load on the Falcon 9's second stage. We're now T-minus 14 minutes, 26 seconds and counting. Things continue to move nominally on the countdown tonight. Of course, SpaceX is going to be using the workhorse vehicle for the company, the Falcon 9 rocket. Let's talk a little bit about it for those who may not be as familiar. Falcon 9 stands at 70 meters or 229 feet tall, has a diameter of 3.66 meters or 12 feet. The majority of that is made up by the first stage of the rocket. Today's booster, tail number 1073 in the SpaceX fleet, has flown 14 times before, going for its 15th time tonight. We'll talk a little bit about that booster history in just a few minutes. The base of the first stage are 9 Merlin engines, which burn rocket-grade kerosene and liquid oxygen, producing 1.7 million pounds of thrust. Around the engine compartment are the black carbon fiber landing legs that will be used to land the first stage on the drone ship, a short fall of gravitas. Above the first stage is the inner stage. This is a composite structure consisting of an aluminum honeycomb core which is surrounded by carbon fiber. In the inside image on the right-hand side of your screen, you can see those deployable hypersonic grid fins. These are titanium winglets that provide stability and steering for the Falcon 9 as it comes back through the atmosphere tail first, like a big old dart towards the drone ship. At the top of the inner stage are 3 mechanical latches that attach to the Falcon 9's second stage, and at first stage main engine cutoff, high-pressure helium is used to release those latches. 4 pneumatic pushers ensure a clean separation. Second stage engine nozzle is also housed safely inside the inner stage adapter until stage separation. Speaking of that second stage, the upper stage of the Falcon 9 powered by a single modified Merlin engine called a Merlin vacuum engine or an MVAC engine. It's equipped with a large nozzle which is optimized for burns in the vacuum of space, hence the name. It produces more than 200,000 pounds of thrust and it will be fired twice on today's flight to place the 23 Starlink satellites into their intended orbit. Same as the first stage, the MVAC burns the same propellant mix, liquid oxygen and RP1, same as the first, as I mentioned. And following Starlink satellite deployment, there will be a third burn of that upper stage, a deorbit burn to drive the upper stage back into the atmosphere, where it will burn up, helping to eliminate the risk of creating any unnecessary space debris on this mission. Finally, as we're now T-minus 11 minutes, 57 seconds and counting, talk about the payload fairings, piece of the rocket that encapsulates the 23 Starlink satellites. They're made up of a carbon composite material that is 13.1 meters or 43 feet tall. They are 5.2 meters or 17.1 feet in diameter. The two halves of the payload fairing will be recovered a little further downrange from where the first stage lands on a drone ship. They gently splash down into parachutes. SpaceX will use the recovery vessel Doug to scoop them up out of the Atlantic waters, return them to Port Canaveral, where they will be brought back by ground transport to Cape Canaveral Space Force Station, refurbished, and turned around for future flights. Currently T-minus 9 minutes, 53 seconds and counting. As we continue to track the progress of the Falcon 9 rocket towards the launch of the Starlink 6-58 mission, do want to pause our general commentary and take a moment to reflect on what has been a difficult week for the Space Corps here not only on Florida's Space Coast, but all those who come down to cover the rocket launches and the full process of it. Want to take a moment to remember one of our colleagues, John O'Connor, who did some stalwart work as a photographer and has been on the beat for quite a number of years. And to talk about him for just a moment, I want to bring in our Spaceflight Now editor, Stephen Young. So, Stephen, I'll turn the mic over to you. Just your thoughts on the passing of John as he was out amongst our colleagues doing what he loved, getting ready to support a rocket launch. Stephen.
Thank you, Will. This week, we lost a valued member of our space media family. For more than 2 decades, John O'Connor of NASA Tech.net documented the space program through his photography and his panoramas here at NASA's Kennedy Space Center and Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. He died unexpectedly on Tuesday, doing what he loved best, photographing launch operations here at the Cape. We want to thank our friends and colleagues in the news media and NASA who were there for John on that difficult day. He will be missed. Ad Astra, John.
Thanks to Stephen for those kind words, and again to all of our colleagues in the space media, to NASA and Boeing and ULA and the press offices respectively. We're all thinking about you in a difficult moment. So thanks to all who have some kind thoughts for John and his family. We are now T-minus 6 minutes, 15 seconds and counting. The next Falcon 9 launch, lifting off on the Starlink 6-58 mission. At this point, SpaceX is about a minute into the engine chill process, thermally conditioning the engines on the Falcon 9 rocket. Just about a minute and a half away from the start of the Strongback retract sequence. As the clamp arms underneath the Falcon 9's payload fairings will open up and recline about a degree and a half away from the rocket. It stays in that position until liftoff. Now T-minus 5 minutes, 5 seconds and counting. This will be the 15th flight of this particular booster, tail number 1073. Let's go ahead and talk briefly about its launch history before we get to the Strongback retract sequence here. Started with the launch of a batch of Starlink satellites. It was on May 14th, 2022. Almost 2 years exactly from today. Starlink 4-15. That was followed by the launch of a C-band communications satellite for SES on June 29th. A pair of Starlink missions 4-26 and 4-35 in August and September of that year. Followed by a mission to the moon, the Hakuto R lander for Japan-based company iSpace. Moving to last year, Amazonas Nexus launched on February 7th from Pad 40. It was followed by mission to the International Space Station, Commercial Resupply Services, or CRS-27 on March 15th. That was followed up by a number of Starlink launches. We had Starlink 6-2, 5-11, 6-12, 6-27, 6-37, and 6-41. And most recently, there was the Bandwagon 1 mission, a rideshare mission, launching on April 7th. With that, we're starting to get some pad views from SpaceX. We're now at the T-3 minute mark. At this point, SpaceX should be wrapping up with liquid oxygen load on the Falcon 9's first stage.
Stage 1 LOX load complete.
You hear that call out? Last bit of fueling remaining is second stage LOX load. That should wrap up in just about 30 seconds. Now less than 2 minutes before liftoff.
Stage 2 LOX load complete.
With that, the Falcon 9 is now fully fueled and ready for launch in less than 2 minutes, coming up about a minute and a half away from launch. Want to thank a couple more people in the time we have remaining. We'll come back to the super chats and other member comments on the other side of liftoff.
Ground gas closeouts.
Want to thank Explorer for a $5 super chat. Saying new subscriber here, get yourself a coffee. Thank you, Explorer. Channel member Psychonaut saying Happy Mother's Day to you, or Robinson Smith, and I'll pass that along to my mom. Says, by the way, thanks as always for the great commentary. Thank you so much, Psychonaut, and I promise I'll return to thank other folks in the super chat on the other side of liftoff, but now that we are within a minute, let's go ahead and keep our focus on the launch.
Falcon 9 is in startup.
Now coming up in 45 seconds. Next call we should be hearing is the SpaceX launch director giving the call that they are go for launch.
Go for launch.
And with that call, we are now 25 seconds away from the liftoff of the Falcon 9 rocket.
T-minus 30 seconds and counting.
15 seconds. And here we go. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Engine ignition and liftoff. Liftoff of the Falcon 9 rocket on the Starlink 6-58 mission. Getting ready to add 23 more Starlink satellites to the constellation in low Earth orbit, bringing the total to 6,000 orbiting the Earth. We're now 30 seconds into the mission. Let's listen to the roar of those 9 Merlin 1D engines. Now a minute into flight. Falcon 9 coming up on max Q, the point of greatest aerodynamic pressure on the vehicle. Falcon 9 supersonic, traveling faster than the speed of sound. Some great tracking views from our team here.
Max Q.
Got the call of vehicles pass through max Q. Coming up will be a few different events in fairly rapid succession. We'll see first stage main engine cutoff, or MECO, at about 2 minutes and 25 seconds into flight. That'll be followed by stage separation 3 seconds later, and then second stage engine start, SES-1. It'll culminate with the fairing deployment
MVAC engine chill has started.
just about at the 3-minute mark. Some great shots from our team here. This view from Adam Bernstein. His tracking camera here at the press site. Been cycling between him, Pete, Chuck. This view from Pete Karstens. Now about 5 seconds away from MECO. There you see main engine cutoff, stage separation. Second stage engine start.
MECO?
Stage separation confirmed.
MVAC startup.
And some great views from the onboard cameras there. The Falcon 9 first and second stages. Coming up on fairing deployment in just a few seconds. See those grid fins deploying on the Falcon 9 first stage. There you see the payload fairings now falling away in Pete's camera view. Great shot, Pete. Should see the same momentarily on the SpaceX feed.
Fairing separation confirmed.
And there you have it. About 3.5 minutes into flight. The next milestone we're anticipating is the first stage entry burn beginning. That'll come up at about T plus 6 minutes and 10 seconds. Now a little more than 4 minutes into flight. So far, all going smoothly with this mission. And a great little streak of sunset that you can see from the Falcon 9's upper stage camera. Just a tiny little crescent of the Earth's atmosphere beyond that Merlin vacuum engine. Those bursts that you're seeing from the Falcon 9 first stage camera view, there's the cold gas thrusters which help to adjust the attitude of the vehicle. Now 5 minutes into flight. We are now just a little more than a minute away from the start of that first stage entry burn beginning. Now, depending on the level of cloud in between our cameras and the Falcon 9 first stage, we may be able to bring you the first stage entry burn from our tracking cameras here. it's dark enough that we should be able to see it, but again, it'll all depend on how much or how many clouds and the thickness of them between us and the Falcon 9 first stage. We will do our level best. If we can, we'll be sure to bring that to you. Now less than 20 seconds away from the first stage entry burn beginning. Entry burn should be getting underway now in real time. And some great work by
Stage 1 entry burn startup.
our team here. First
Stage 1
view
FTS is saved.
from Adam. Now we're looking at Pete's camera. Well done, gentlemen. Then as your burn now wrapped up in real time, you're seeing it coming in on a slight delay from the SpaceX feed.
Stage 1 entry burn shutdown.
Stage 2 FTS is saved.
Some good callouts from SpaceX as things continue to move nominally on this flight. That glow that you're seeing in Chuck Briggs' camera, that is the Falcon 9 second stage. That Merlin vacuum engine that you see there in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen, those are the views of it from our tracking cameras on the ground in real time. Now a little more than 7 minutes into flight, we are coming up in less than 30 seconds on the start of the first stage landing burn. Looking for a touchdown on the drone ship, a short fall of gravitas.
Stage 1 transonic.
Now call out the Falcon 9 first stage traveling below the speed of sound, and you can see the speedometer dropping rapidly as it's now less than 5 kilometers in altitude.
Stage 1 landing burn.
Should see some drone
Stage
ship,
2 in terminal guidance.
drone ship views coming up on the right-hand side of your screen.
Landing leg deploy. Stage 1 landing confirmed.
And a good touchdown of the Falcon 9 first stage, B-1073, and what sounds like a new addition for SpaceX, getting some audio from the drone ship for the landing, which is very cool.
And vac shutdown.
And with that call for the MVAC shutdown, the Merlin vacuum engine will cease firing, go into parking orbit, where it will coast until about T plus 54 minutes and 9 seconds. There will be a brief 1 second burn on that engine, setting up for Starlink satellite deployment at T plus 1 hour, 5 minutes, and 18 seconds. So far, all going very smoothly on this mission. And as promised, we'll return before we hit our mission stats tonight. I want to thank some of the folks that helped make this live coverage possible. There were quite a number of comments before we had to pivot over to focusing on the liftoff and landing, so I want to thank folks while they're still here. Our thanks to Yusuf Zidan for a $10 super chat. Thank you so much, Yusuf. Mark Thiemann, also $10 super chat. Thank you so much, Mark, saying thank you, Spaceflight Now team and the moderators. Viewing with Phil, Jane, Mike, and Tina. Go SpaceX. Tyler Mallow for the $1 super chat. Thank you so much, Tyler. Appreciate that. Brian from Philly $5 super chat saying hello from Latana, Florida. Hello. Tyler Mallow also saying hello to all my family with another super chat there. Thank you, Tyler. Channel member Tracy Nichols with a $5 super chat saying, how long have you been doing this YouTube channel? Well, I personally have been here for coming up on a year now. It'll be a year this July that I've been with Spaceflight Now. But Spaceflight Now as a publication has been around for quite a bit longer. In fact, this is the 25th anniversary of Spaceflight Now as a media organization. I want to thank Jonathan McD. Jonathan McD has been a member for 3 months. Appreciate you being with us. Jonathan, who says good morning from Scotland. Good morning to you, sir. Nicole, joining us with channel membership at the pad leader level. Really appreciate that, Nicole. Welcome aboard. We're glad to have you with us. Psycho not clarifying a typo, saying Happy Mother's Day to me. I will share that Happy Mother's Day sentiment with my mother. Thank you, Psycho Not. Colton Batum for the super chat as well. Thank you so much, Colton. Vincent Forres with a $5 super chat says, love your coverage. Look forward to every time. Well, thank you so much, Vincent, and for supporting us. Rebecca Seelig with a $10 super chat. Thank you so much, Rebecca. Appreciate your support tonight. Phil McCracken with a $2 super chat as well. Appreciate you, Phil. Marcus Hort with a $5 super chat, and got a couple that are sort of in this vein here, saying in memory of John O'Connor. Yes, he is and will continue to be missed in our space coverage community here. TC Row 58 also with a lovely sentiment. Rest in peace, John O'Connor. Robert C. saying, I super chat, God bless Elon and the engineers every launch. Now I must add, rest in peace to John. We lost a legend. Josh King, also with some support this evening, saying, rest in peace, John O'Connor, you will be missed. And he will indeed. I want to thank Bad News for a Canadian super chat here. Thank you so much, Bad News. Asking why no sun-synchronous satellites with live feeds. Presume you mean live optical feeds in that orbit. It's well, it's always expensive to send live pictures down from space. It's a challenging orbit to send live images back from, but of course there are spacecraft that are taking and sending back fairly continuous streams of data. For example, NASA's PACE spacecraft, which launched earlier this year. Thank you for your support. Michael Arredondo saying, please send a big happy birthday to Lauren Izat. Lauren, a very happy birthday to you. Seeing the transporter erector making its way back up into the upright position, part of SpaceX's process of turning around the pads much more quickly. Our thanks to Tom Johnson as well for a very generous $20 super chat. Thank you so much, Tom. Really appreciate your support on that level. Mike with the $10 super chat. Thank you so much, Mike. Saying hello from Arizona. Do you know when roughly it will orbit over the southwest region? Fortunately, I'm not entirely sure what the "it" is that you're referring to, Mike, so I don't really have a good way to answer that question. If the "it" is the International Space Station, there are a couple of apps that you can download for your phone that track the station. You can see when it makes passes over your area. As Stephen is reminding me, if the "it" you're referring to is not the station, but in fact the Starlink satellites that we just saw launched and will be deployed in less than an hour, there are also some websites that track Starlink movement as well. Retired stockbroker, the $2 super chat. Thank you, retired stockbroker, saying, my father worked on the Saturn V. Newbie here. Happy MD. Mother's Day, of course. Thank you, stockbroker. Nifty comment from Cole Cunningham saying, one of my best buds welds those rockets. Well, whichever your bud is doing the welding did a bang-up job tonight. Dashinj, the $5 super chat, thank you so much. And a welcome to Akos Sewell, joining us with channel membership at the pad leader level. And with all that, let's go ahead and begin to close things out as we always do, taking a look at the mission stats as they currently stand with a successful liftoff and landing of the Falcon 9 rocket. This was the 15th flight of this particular booster, tail number 1073 in the SpaceX fleet. This was the 334th Falcon 9 launch to date, the 49th Falcon flight of 2024. This was the 277th Falcon booster reflight, or the launch of a booster that has flown at least once. This was SpaceX's 50th launch of 2024, including the third integrated flight test of the Starship rocket. Looking for Flight 4 potentially in the early to mid-June timeframe, based on what SpaceX founder Elon Musk posted on X not too long ago. This was SpaceX's 115th orbital launch within the last 365 days. This was the 185th orbital launch from Pad 40 and the 240th overall launch from this pad to date. Moving on to some recovery stats, this was the 69th landing of a booster on the drone ship a shortfall of gravitas. This was SpaceX's 239th drone ship landing and the 307th overall booster landing to date. Looking at the bar chart here for the Falcon family of launches. Of course, we have 49 on the year, moving very close, not too far away from catching the total number of Falcon flights back in 2022. Finally, some industry stats moving out. This was the 36th orbital launch from Florida, the 52nd from U.S. soil, the 56th from a U.S. rocket company so far, and the 91st orbital launch from around the globe. One orbital launch failure, one mishap. Here's where the pie chart stands now. The U.S. continuing to hold on 62% of the pie. China launching over the weekend as well, bringing its total up to 22. Russia with 6 missions on the year. Japan with 3. India and Iran with 2 apiece. Taking a look back at the live chat, want to thank TNPop2 for gifting a Spaceflight Now membership. Thank you so much. As we begin to close things out tonight, want to direct your attention over to Starbase, where sun is starting to set there, but see Ship 29 getting ready to be stacked on top of Super Heavy booster just over its shoulder there at the orbital launch mount. As mentioned, SpaceX is working towards the 4th integrated flight test of its Starship rocket, potentially as soon as the June timeframe, based on what Elon Musk had to say about the matter on X. And with that, we're going to go ahead and close things out. Want to thank our wonderful moderators in the live chat, those that were with us and those that are with us on other nights. So thanks to Astro Jen, Astro Joe, Callistia Lee, Rusty Shackelford. Appreciate all of you for all you do. And Stephanie B, of course. Thanks to our friends Pete Karstens with Max Q Productions and Chuck Briggs for providing some tracking views for us tonight. Also want to thank our own launch photography team of Adam Bernstein and Michael Kane. If you're not already following them on X, you can find their handles here, ABurnNYC and MD Kane Jr. Our thanks to our Spaceflight Now editor, Stephen Young, for running the technical operations of the broadcast. And most importantly, thanks to you for wherever you are watching with us in the world. We hope you all have a wonderful conclusion to Mother's Day and start to the work week. And a big thanks to all the moms out there for all you do in raising your kids and being good role models. And a special happy Mother's Day to my mom. So for all of us here, the Spaceflight Now family, be good to yourselves, be good to others. If you'd like to keep watching things down in Starbase, you can check us out over on our 24-hour live channel, Launchpad Live. And folks, we will see you next time. Bye-bye.